Christmas clearly came early this year. How do I know? Well, you clicked on the video, so you can probably guess already, but the Sly Cooper Trilogy is back in action! In June of this year, PlayStation added Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. It was the first in a wave of games released with Sony's new PS2 emulator. They've tried PS2 emulation before, but to very limited success. This new one has worked pretty well so far, so PS2 games have been dropping on PS4 and PS5 all year long, even improving it as they went along. Sly 1 got a patch the other day, in fact. But we'll talk about that later in the video. The Sly 1 footage in this video is from June, so it was before the patch. But after I played it in June and recommended everyone download it, what I was obviously left wondering was, when are we getting Sly 2 Band of Thieves and Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves? These three are some of my favorite games ever to be made. So having Sly 1 was great, but I wanted that full trilogy installed. And now, we've got all three. Sly 2 and Sly 3 just came out this week, as did an updated version of Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. It's all a part of PlayStation's big 30th anniversary celebration. I considered making a video on Jak as well, but a discussion like that can be saved for a later day. I did do a video on the PS5 Sly 1 when it came out in June, but I figured making a video titled Sly 2 and 3 on PS5 review would seem pretty weird for anyone who missed the original, so I'm just going to talk about all three here. So before we get into whether or not this is a good version of the Sly Cooper trilogy, let's go over some basic facts. The games you're getting here are Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, the first game released in 2002. You take control of Sly Cooper in his quest to recover his family heirloom, the Thievius Raccoonus, from 5 dastardly villains who stole it from him. I love this game. It's a simple and fun action stealth platformer with great characters and writing and art direction. Absolute classic game. I love playing this. Sly 2 Band of Thieves is one of my favorite games ever made. It gave me my love of games as art. Sly is joined by his gang members Bentley and Murray, playable for the first time as you travel around the world searching for the clockwork parts that got stolen by the Claw Gang, which gets the Cooper Gang wrapped up in an international conspiracy. I won't spoil it from there because this one ought to be played blind. Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves is easily my least favorite of the bunch. But like, say, Return of the Jedi, it's still pretty good, and a very worthy and satisfying finale to the series, as Sly and the gang need to expand their ranks in order to break into the Cooper Vault, the secret hiding spot of all the Cooper family's stolen goods. And along the way, you get to question how much legacy is really worth if it inhibits one's ability to live life how they want to. For some, Sly 3 is their favorite, which totally makes sense. I get liking any of these the most. I just like 1 and 2 more than 3, but I still love 3. Now, if you have a PS Premium account, which I do, you can download all of these games for free. If not, they're $10 each, which is a pretty fair price if you ask me. Also, something to note, if you see that massive file size, worry not. It's so big because there is a PS4 version and a PS5 version with different file sizes. The big number here is the two sizes combined, but you only need to download one. I obviously just picked the PS5 option because it's what I was playing on. Anyway, you might wonder how this differs from the Sly Collection you can find in the PlayStation Store, and the answer is this. The Sly Collection is the 2010 remastered trilogy for PlayStation 3. On PS4 and 5, you can stream this game via the cloud. For the average person with a standard internet connection, it doesn't run very well and is not that stable. At least, streaming games when I lived at my parents' house was a nightmare. However, now my place has great internet, so you can see on screen that it runs pretty well. However, it is pretty pixelated though. But I was also using Wi-Fi and not Ethernet, so no doubt that might have boosted it. So basically, your mileage may vary. This new Sly Trilogy release is not a native port of Sly, this is a new PS2 emulator that Sony has worked on alongside implicit conversions. Some staff there even worked on the PS2 emulator for PC called PCSX2. So, this is an emulation of the PS2 original, which means it comes with all the ups and downs of that experience. If you are someone who preferred the HD widescreen gameplay of the 2010 remaster, you aren't going to get it here. This is the original Sly Cooper how it was on PS2. But that's not to say the emulator doesn't have any improvements. For example, all three Sly games on PlayStation 2 had this ghosting effect on the motion. This was still the case when Sly 1 came out in June, but with 2 and 3, I actually slowed the footage down, and it seems like this issue has been fixed. But even with the patch, Sly 1 still has not seen this improvement. What's in place across the board is the 4:3 aspect ratio, because the original Sly Trilogy didn't have widescreen on PlayStation 2. If you're someone who doesn't like that, it might be another drawback. Personally, it's not a bother to me. I don't hate the HD collection and think it's more than good enough as a way to play Sly, but I'm a bit of a Sly purist, so I always play the games on my PS2 or PCSX2 on my PC whenever I revisit them. The HD collection has many downsides, like how visual assets that were designed for a 4:3 aspect ratio didn't fit the boundaries of modern 16:9 TVs, and the port team didn't feel like correcting that. And it had other issues, like how the silhouette effect from the intro of each game wasn't present in the HD version, or how they removed bonus content. In the first game, when you'd beat the time trials for every level, you were rewarded with a designer's commentary for that stage, seeing the team talk about how the level and how it evolved from concept to final product. For some reason, that was removed in the 2010 version of Sly Cooper. In the 2024 release, it's all here and accounted for. The HD collection version of Sly 1 also had a slightly rearranged soundtrack by the same composer as the OG game. Which one you like more is just a matter of preference, but in the Miss Ruby boss fight, the slightly changed music timing altered the boss fight, which made it far more difficult. And this was already a pretty well-known part amongst Sly fans, often being cited as the hardest segment in the entire trilogy. See, I've been playing this game for the better part of 20 years, and I still die to it all the time. But this new emulator does come with some extras for those who struggle with it. The emulator has save states, so if you already know you're about to play a challenging section, you can save your spot and reload it as many times as you may need. I never did that because I don't think the game is that hard, and I doubt most adults playing Sly 2 and 3 would need save states. Sly 1 maybe because it was a more difficult game, but Sly 2 and 3 are very generous with health and checkpoints, so I don't think you'd need it. But even then, another nifty feature is the rewind function. You can go backward in gameplay by like a few seconds or minutes to redo something you failed at, like the Ms. Ruby boss fight. If you like to cheese games in their harder segments, this is a feature for you. The options menu is the same whether you play on PS4 or PS5. The left and right side of the PS4 and 5's touchpad function as the PS2 controller's start and select button. The PS4 and 5's actual start button accesses the emulator menu. Here you can switch between the NTSC versions or the PAL region version. And thankfully you can fully rebind the controls. The main actions feel great on the default button layout, but you could not invert the camera controls, which bugs a lot of people, so this can be changed in the options menu here. Visually, you have a couple of options to pick from. The default setting was the one you see in this footage. The colors were balanced how they were in the original version, so I thought it was the best one to use. The modern visual setting just made the colors darker, so I didn't see the value in picking this. I thought the classic arcade filter just made the whole screen an ugly pink. Maybe for older games this might be alright, but for PS2, I thought it was ugly. Modern arcade mode looked fine though, but the default is just the best one if you ask me. There was also the enhancements option. When this is turned on, this is how you access the rewind feature I went into a moment ago. This is on both PS4 and PS5. However, the enhancements being turned on make the game run worse when playing on PS4 from what I hear. I imagine loading rewinds for a 3D action game like this is pretty intense for over a decade-old hardware like the PlayStation 4. So use at your own risk on that console, but from my experience it worked pretty great on PS5. But if I were in charge of the emulator, I would put a few more options in here, like the aspect ratio. I just said I don't mind it being 4:3, but I would have gone beyond the one option. Some would probably prefer to stretch the image to fill the screen horizontally. I don't like how it distorts the picture, but some would prefer that to fill the screen. For me, I thought the image was too wide already, even though it didn't fill the screen. If you look at my PS2 or PCSX2 footage, you can see the image is much skinnier, which I prefer since it's the original resolution. If we could get the option to pick between these three modes, that would be great. In addition to the arcade filters, I think it would have been nice if there was a native resolution perfect pixel option. If you've seen any of my videos, you'd know that I'm fond of this option for pretty much every retro console, even with 3D graphics, so I wish that was an option too. And it's not just wishful thinking, I know updates are possible. Sly 1 has been patched a couple times since it came out in June. Like I said, one such patch came out the day before Sly 2 and 3 released. It corrected a major visual bug that was added in the PS4 and 5 version. When it first came out, the mission in Episode 5, titled Burning Rubber, where Murray has to run over 60 computers with the van, had a bug where Murray and the van and the fire slugs would keep turning solid ink black. This new patch actually fixes that. But then I also noticed the game looked a lot sharper, too. I couldn't tell if this was just my eyes or my memory or if it was real, so I looked back at the footage of Sly 1 that I recorded in June, and I could tell that the emulator just didn't look as sharp. On screen, you can see the image from June and how it looked pretty blurry because the emulator used this softening filter on everything, which made the text and the models look blurry. Now you can see the new patch and compare and see that this is much better. The image is far sharper. So I believe, since changes have been made, it's possible for more to come in the future. If you like replayability, you're in luck. The PS4 and 5 versions of the trilogy feature their own trophy list, separate from the one that it had on PS3, many of which are far more challenging than that PS3 list, so you can really get the most out of the games beyond fully completing them. Speaking of which, I 100%ed Sly 1 on PS5 and had a lot of fun with the time trials. All of Sly's sequels were really easy games, and while the first one is meant to be a simple game, it's still always fun to replay these parts that require such nail-biting precision. The reward for completing them is the behind-the-scenes video. But what does not unlock is the commercials for Sly 1. Sly 2 also doesn't have the commercials included despite them being in the original game. The reason for that is probably something to do with licensing or rights or things like that. But on the note of replayability, this new version of Sly 2 did something quite unexpected. All 3 Sly games in every previous iteration had unskippable cutscenes, but with Sly 2, by pressing start during scenes, you can skip through them. It's very crudely implemented in that you can skip through one line of audio at a time, and this will leave audio still running during gameplay.
Sly!
Looks like there's a few pools along the way to Rajan's office. A short swim every now and then should keep our little friend quiet.
But you can use this to skip the slideshows and tutorial dialogue that I've heard dozens upon dozens upon dozens of times now. So it's a godsend for me. In Sly 1, it's probably impossible to implement because pausing the game during in-engine cutscenes just paused the game. Maybe they couldn't find a way around that, but I don't mind. That game didn't have as many cutscenes anyway. But then, I don't know why you can't skip anything in Sly 3. That would have been really useful since some of the cutscenes in that game are really long, but still, maybe it can be added in 1 and 3 later. Who knows? But as it is, this certainly tips the scales towards this being the best Sly Trilogy experience out there. Even though tow cables go haywire in Sly 2 for some reason. That never happened in any previous version. But at the end of the day, I was pretty pleased with this. As the video stated, there are issues here that could be patched out and features I'd like to see as the emulator grows with more games added, but this was pretty cool. I think it's a great way to revisit the Sly Cooper Trilogy for those who have not played it and those who haven't played it in a long time and those who have played it far too many times and everyone in between. It's not perfect, but it's really good, and for me, it was just really nice to be able to boot up a new Sly Cooper release on a modern PlayStation console. The Sly Cooper Trilogy stands tall as a foreman of my gaming tastes. I really wouldn't be here doing this without these games. So it's nice to see Sly back, even just re-releasing the classic trilogy, which I could replay and enjoy any day of the week. The last time there was a Sly Cooper release of any kind was 10 years ago when the trilogy came out on PlayStation Vita, which of course I own. And if we all buy it and give it good ratings, hey, maybe they might do a reboot or a trilogy remake. Although I'm far more than content never getting a new Sly game again. The ending of Sly 3 is pretty definitive, so at the very least, I think we're likely never getting a Sly 5. That shit would be dead on arrival, because, Sly 4 was not a successful release and is over a decade old. Credit to me, I've gone this whole video without even mentioning Sly 4 until now. If you want to play Sly Cooper Thieves in Time on PlayStation 4 and 5, it's also available for streaming, with the same issues as I went into earlier. If you have a good internet and want to play Sly 4, you can do it if you have a PS Premium account. But I just think Sly 4 was a conceptual misfire for many reasons I've gone into in past videos, even if the game itself is fine and was very well made and all that good shit. But I'm getting sidetracked. My only point here is that I'm fine never getting a new Sly game again because we have the games we have and now they're available on modern PlayStation consoles, which is more than good enough for me. Any Sly Cooper fan should buy these, especially those who have spent years complaining that these obscure, never really that popular IPs don't get enough love as the creators of these games move on to other things. This might show that many still love Sly and the gang. But yeah, that was a quick video, but I wanted to spread some love for Sly and raise awareness for this release for those who might not have known about it. But with that said, there's only one video I want to make for this year past this one, and it's of course about Sonic the Hedgehog, so in the meantime, I will close by saying what I always do. If you made it this far into the video, you've seen everything. Go outside.